Ever notice how the most powerful people never seem to be trying? While you're over-explaining yourself, they just exist, and everyone orbits around them. What if silence is the weapon you've been ignoring? There's a certain type of person who walks into a space and shifts the entire atmosphere without uttering a single word. It's not charisma. It's not looks. It's something far more unsettling. It's the impression that this person knows something you don't, and you, without understanding why, desperately want to find out. Most people are terrified of social silence. They think every second of interaction needs to be filled with words, opinions, stories about themselves. Fatal mistake. Because while you're busy explaining who you are, the quiet person is watching you reveal who you actually are. And that, my friend, is leverage. Consider interrogation tactics. The most effective technique isn't raising your voice. It's sitting in complete silence and letting the other person unravel, trying to fill the void. Silence creates psychological pressure. It forces movement, and whoever moves first loses ground. Now examine your daily life. How many times have you talked too much in a meeting? How many times have you telegraphed your intentions prematurely? Every unnecessary word is a card thrown on the table, and the social game rewards those who hold their cards until the precise moment. Emotional mastery starts here, in your ability to exist comfortably in silence while others squirm. It's not coldness, it's control. It's knowing your presence already communicates enough, and anything beyond that is wasted power. The samurai understood a concept called ma, the empty space between actions. They recognized that power doesn't reside in the strike itself, but in the interval before it, in the tension created when nothing happens, but everything could. That's the essence of silent magnetism. You want to be intriguing? Stop trying to be intriguing. Allow yourself to be unreadable. Let people wonder what's happening inside your head. Because mystery isn't deception, it's information economy, and scarce information has always been more valuable than abundant information. How many times have you shown your entire hand in the first conversation? How scarcity makes you an absolute priority. Want to know the most uncomfortable truth about human relationships? We don't value what's always available. Doesn't matter if it's friendship, romance, or professional respect. What's constant becomes invisible. What's rare becomes irresistible. You've seen how people chase whoever doesn't respond to messages immediately, while that friend who's always free gets sidelined. It's not cruelty, it's pure psychology. The human mind was wired to pursue what retreats, not what offers itself freely. But pay attention, strategic scarcity isn't playing hard to get. It's not about pretending to be busy while scrolling through social feeds. It's about genuinely having a life so filled with purpose that your social availability becomes authentically limited. Because fake scarcity gets detected, and when they discover it, you lose credibility permanently. The logic is straightforward. Time is finite. Attention is finite. If you distribute these things as if they were infinite, you train people not to value your presence. They start assuming you'll always be there, and what's always there stops being special. Watch real leaders. They're not at every meeting. Don't respond every email instantly. Don't show up at every social gathering. And because of this, when they do appear, the entire room notices. Sporadic presence carries weight. Constant presence breeds transparency. There's an ancient law about power. Never appear too frequently in the same place. Because familiarity breeds contempt. Not literally, of course, but it breeds comfort. And comfort kills tension. And tension is what keeps people alert, attentive, invested in you. Now think strategically. If you want someone to value you, a boss, a client, a romantic interest, what's the smartest move? Being always available, always responding, always present, or creating small intervals where your absence is felt? The answer is obvious, but few people have the discipline to apply it. Because it requires self-control. It requires resisting the impulse to prove your worth constantly. And self-control, my friend, has always been the most sophisticated form of power. When was the last time you made someone wait, not out of disrespect, but out of strategy? Why? Revealing less makes you worth more. The most fascinating people you know share something in common. They never deliver the complete story. You talk with them and leave thinking, wait, What else does this person do? Where were they before? What do they really think? And the more you think about them, the more mental space they occupy. This isn't accidental. Selective disclosure is a narrative control technique. You're not lying. You're not hiding crimes. You're simply understanding that every detail you share reduces the other person's margin of interpretation about you. And interpretation is where fantasy lives. And fantasy, my friend, is more powerful than reality. Think about movie trailers. They show enough to spark curiosity, but never reveal the climax. If they showed everything, nobody would go to the theater. Your social life operates the same way. If you tell everything about yourself at the first date, first meeting, first hallway conversation, you've eliminated any reason for that person to want to know you better. There's a delicate balance here. Being too reserved can appear as arrogance or disinterest, but being an open book is worse, because open books get read quickly and forgotten. Enigmas, on the other hand, stay in people's minds for weeks. Professional interrogators' technique relies on this, asking questions and never revealing what they already know. They let the interrogated fill in the blanks, creating versions of truth that contradict themselves. In the social world, you do the same. You let people project onto you what they want to see, and then, strategically, you confirm or deny, always dosing information. Know that person you follow on social media and never fully understand what they do, but they always seem to be doing something relevant. That person has mastered selective disclosure. They post enough to seem active, but never enough to be completely decoded. Emotional self-mastery enters here too, because revealing less requires controlling the human impulse to be understood. Everyone wants to be seen, but the strong understand that being seen too much means losing mystique. And mystique is social currency. What secret about yourself does nobody know? And how does that change the way they see you? If you've realized you talk too much about yourself, comment, restraint, and tell me, what information about yourself should you stop sharing? If this resonated, hit like. Want more? Subscribe. How emotional independence creates magnetic attraction. Have you noticed that the most attractive people, and I'm not talking about physical beauty, never seem to need external validation? They don't fish for compliments. Don't beg for attention. Don't change behavior when ignored. They simply exist with unshakable solidity. And this, paradoxically, makes everyone want to be near them. The logic is simple but brutal. Neediness repels. Doesn't matter how much you try to disguise it. People sense when you need them. And exposed. Emotional need is like blood in water for social sharks. They know you won't leave. So why value you? True emotional independence isn't pretending not to care. It's genuinely not needing others to define your worth. It's knowing that if everyone left your life tomorrow, you'd remain whole. Scary? Perhaps. Liberating? Absolutely. There's a brutal difference between being alone and being complete alone. Most people avoid solitude because they can't stand their own company. They need constant noise, constant validation, constant presence of others. And this makes them dependent. And dependency is negotiable weakness. Think about historical figures who changed the world. They weren't waiting for approval, weren't asking permission, weren't adjusting their visions to please the masses. They had internal conviction so solid that external opinion became irrelevant. And people, sensing that solidity, bowed to it. Now, live your own life. How many decisions have you made based on what others would think? How many times have you adjusted your personality to fit into a group? Each time you do this, you surrender pieces of your power, and people, subconsciously, start seeing you as malleable. And malleable is synonymous with weak. Self-confidence without need for validation is the apex of mental strength. Because it means you've internalized your own value. You don't need anyone telling you you're good enough. You already know. And when you know, you stop performing for audiences. You just act. An action without need for approval is pure magnetism. What decision would you make if you knew nobody would ever know about it? What if strategic distance is the path to real connections? Here's the paradox nobody tells you. The deepest connections you'll have in life won't come from always being available. They'll come from being selective enough that when you do show up, your presence means something. Think about old friendships that remain strong even with years of distance. Why? Because they were built on quality, not quantity. Because shared moments carried weight. They weren't automatic, obligatory, empty encounters. They were intentional. The mistake most people make is thinking constant proximity generates intimacy. It doesn't. It generates familiarity. And familiarity, without substance, transforms into routine. And routine kills interest. You become scenery, not an event. Strategic detachment isn't abandonment. It's curation. It's choosing to be present only when you can add real value. It's understanding your energy is finite and must be directed toward who truly matters. It's not selfishness. It's intelligent self-protection. The Stoics had a practice called premeditatio malorum, visualizing loss before it happens. They did this to avoid attaching desperately to people, things, or situations. Because desperate attachment creates dependency, and dependency creates vulnerability, and vulnerability, when poorly managed, transforms into exploitable weakness. So what happens when you apply this logic? You create space, and in that space, people start missing you. And when they miss you, they value your return. And when they value it, they invest. And when they invest, connection stops being superficial and becomes genuine. But there's a critical detail. You can't fake this. You need to genuinely have a life so rich in purpose that your absence is natural, performative. Because if people perceive you're playing games, trust dies. And dead trust never resurrects. Absolute power doesn't come from dominating others. It comes from mastering yourself to the point where you don't need to dominate anyone. It comes from being so comfortable in your own company that others' presence becomes a bonus, not a necessity. And when you reach that point, you realize true magnetism was never about attracting everyone. It was about attracting the right ones. If you could restart your relationships from zero, who would you actually choose to keep close? If you understood that less presence can be worth more, comment, essence, and tell me, which relationship do you maintain out of obligation, not choice? Like if this resonated. Subscribe if you want to think differently. Share this with someone who needs to understand the value of their own absence. Comment, authority.